Remember, Judah, the south, is made up of two tribes, Judah and Benjamin, the two kingly tribes. But he's got people coming in. When Jeroboam decided, I'm going to change this whole thing to a modern religion, and we're going to go with the times and what people like, some people were righteous. They said, we're not going to stand for it, we're leaving. Those would be the Levites and the righteous people. You find that in 2 Chronicles chapter 11. Immigrate, that's the word I want. The priests and the Levites and the righteous people immigrate to Judah. 2 Chronicles chapter 11, verse 13. Second Chronicles 11:13. Yep. So there's really nobody righteous up there. So when God decides he needs a messenger, he pulls it from the south. In verse 13, and the priests and the Levites that were in all Israel resorted to him out of all their coast. For the Levites left their suburbs and their possessions and came to Judah and Jerusalem. For Jeroboam and his sons had cast them off from executing the priest's office unto the Lord. And he ordained him priest for the high places, and for the devils, and for the calves which he had made. Okay, he's wicked from get-go. He said, in order to secure these people, I need a trick. The trick he chose was Satanism, and he knew it. A man of God shows up. We saw that. He comes from the south. That'll be in chapter 13, verse 11. Chapter 13, 11. Now there dwelt an old prophet in Bethel, and his sons came and told him all the works that the man of God had done that day in Bethel. Now, you've got to wonder, if this fella is truly a man of God, why is he still in the north? Why didn't he come south? That's 1 Kings 13, verse 11. I don't know what I told you, but
13:11, I got it wrote down.
13:11. So the young prophet had come up and preached against Jeroboam. Stretched out his hand and said, altar, altar, hear the word of the Lord. Jeroboam stretches out his hand and says, go get that man, and his hand froze. He couldn't draw it back. He said, oh, pray to God and get my hand restored. He restored him his hand. On the way back through, remember God had told the young prophet, don't stop and talk to anybody, don't eat bread anywhere, don't take anything to drink. You're going up there to do a message, and you're coming right back. Well, on the way back, he runs into this fella, an old prophet. Well, wait a minute. All the righteous people left. They weren't hanging around to see the destruction that was going to be caused by the nation as a whole turning to Satanism. So, he may have been formerly a prophet of God, and now he ain't. Or maybe he's just too old and frail to move. Maybe not. Who knows? We'll see. Verse 12. And their father said unto them, what way went he? For his sons had seen what way the man of God went, which came from Judah. And he said unto his sons, saddle me the ass. So they saddled him the ass, and he rode thereon. And he went after the man of God, and found him sitting under an oak. And he said unto him, art thou the man of God that camest from Judah? And he said, I am. Then he said unto him, come home with me and eat bread. You know, the very thing you're told not to do. And he said, I may not return with thee, nor go in with thee. Neither will I eat bread, nor drink water with thee in this place. He knew what was right and what he was supposed to do. For it was said to me by the word of the Lord, thou shalt eat no bread, nor drink water there, nor turn again to go by the way that thou camest. And he said unto him, I am also a prophet. He said unto him, I am a prophet also, as thou art. We be brethren. We're buddies. You know, we're in the same club. Why are you saying that, you know, we're enemies here? Let's all get along and, you know, play Barney. And an angel spoke unto me by the word of the Lord, saying, bring him back with thee unto thine house, that he may eat bread and drink water. Okay, so we've got a contradiction here. Third party is saying, do exactly what God said don't do. God first party told him, don't do this. So now he's going to believe an old man who said an angel told him something God said. You see how far removed it is from the truth? That's why it's best not to believe in dreams and visions and nightmares and something somebody else told you.
That's right.
Get your nose in the book and find out what God says direct.
Yeah.
This is 1 Kings 13. Mm-hmm.
Remind me to talk to you about that later. I had a conversation with that guy and
Yeah.
he just made me remember something else.
Yeah, 1 Kings 13. It's right there on the screen.
Sure it is.
Look at the TV. So, but he lied unto him. Now, the old prophet knows what he's doing. He knows he's lying. And you'll have people lie to you. And they'll lie with religious intent. The devil is not scared of religion. He loves it. Remember the first thing he showed up in the garden and he says, I'll help you be just like God. Okay, so just because somebody's bringing something that sounds religious and, supposedly quoting Scripture or saying something that sounds like Scripture, you better check it out because the devil loves religion. He showed up in Matthew chapter 4 when Jesus was tempted. It says Jesus was led up of the Spirit in the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. Okay, how's the devil tempt him? With the Word of God. It says this, it says that. He knows it, and he sure uses it. Verse 19. So he went back with him, and did eat bread in his house, and drank water. And it came to pass, as they sat at the table, that the word of the Lord came unto the prophet that brought him back. Oh, well now, suddenly the old prophet has gotten religion again. He's been to a revival meeting. All of a sudden, he's fearing from God, but he's hearing the right thing this time. Verse 21, and he cried unto the man of God that came from Judah, saying, Thus saith the Lord, for as much as thou hast disobeyed the mouth of the Lord, and hast not kept the commandment, remember commandments are important, which the Lord thy God commanded thee, but camest back, and hast eaten bread and drunk water in the place of the which the Lord did say unto thee, Eat no bread nor drink water, thy carcass shall not come unto the sepulchre of thy fathers. And it came to pass, after he had eaten bread and after he had drunk, that he saddled for him the ass, to wit, for the prophet whom he had brought back. He said, okay, buddy, time for you to leave. There's going to be some killing going on. I don't want it in my house. Verse 24. And he was gone. A lion met him by the way and slew him. And his carcass was cast in the way. And the ass stood by it. And the lion also stood by the carcass. That'd be a scary thing to see. A dead man, and then the donkey just standing there, and the lion on the other side, like they're guarding it.
Like, I don't even want to know.
That's crazy. Now, it's crazy that the lion's not eating it.
That's crazy.
The lion just killed it.
Or not the mule either.
Yeah. Yeah,
They're just hanging out.
that's right. This is something that God set up. Not man, not nature. These animals are doing something that's contrary to their normal behavior. Verse 25. And behold, men passed by and saw the carcass cast in the way, and the lion standing by the carcass, and they came and told it to in the city where the old prophet dwelt. And when he, I can't read tonight. And when the prophet that brought him back from the way heard thereof, he said, It is the man of God, whom was disobedient unto the word of the Lord. Therefore the Lord hath delivered him unto the lion, which hath torn him and slain him, according to the word of the Lord, which he spoke unto him. Okay, so you find out in this story, there's a lot more there, but my reading is awful tonight, so I'm going to let y'all read it. You'll find, you keep reading there, what happens is he says, hey, that was a real man of God. He goes back and he tells his sons, when I die, I want you to bury me with this old man over here, or with the young prophet. He was so desiring to be used as a public figure, I believe, that he said, when I die, this guy prophesied something, and the prophecy was direct from God, and it will come to pass. So when you bury me, I want my sepulcher right with his. So when people go by, they're going to pay homage to that guy and say, here's a prophet who prophesied something we know came to pass. And let's see who's around him. Oh yeah, there's an old prophet. They must have been buddies. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, they want to be buried together. He wants to be associated with something that was real. Okay, so that's the young man or the young prophet and the old prophet. But that's had to come out of Judah to come up to the north to give them a message.
For causing his death either.
Do what?
He had no remorse for causing his death.
Well, the Old Testament gives you a view of God the Father. The New Testament does not have, because in the New Testament you get a protector, Jesus Christ. In the Old Testament there's no shield. You have unsheathed wrath of God. So, what happens here? The young man disobeyed. He said right there, you disobeyed the commandment of the Lord. When God says, I command you to do this, that's not optional. It's not a negotiation. I command you, go there, don't eat, don't drink there, and don't come back the same way you went. And when he did, the old prophet was exactly right. And he did get a message from God. He did finally get the doom from God to give to the young man. That was 100% God. You're going to die, buddy. You disobeyed the commandment of the Lord. And he got it. He got it. All right, Jeroboam, meanwhile, after the prophecy has, he prayed to the young prophet, said, get my hand back. You know, I believe in your God. He's the real one. Give me my arm back. Well, that was all done just so he could be healed. Not so he could return to God, because he doesn't return to God. Jeroboam continues his evil ways in 1 Kings 13, verse 33. 1 Kings 13:33. You would think after having such a traumatic experience go on, Jeroboam would have woke up. Would have said, hey, there's some power going on down there, and I've already received 2 prophets. Remember, he had the prophet come to him the first time that tore his garment into 10 pieces and said, I'm going to give you 10 kingdoms or 10 tribes, and it really happened. Now the prophet shows up and says, the word of the Lord says this and this. He should have said, oh, I got to get my act together. But he didn't. Verse 33. After this thing, Jeroboam returned not from his evil way. What in the world? Hello? But made again of the lowest of the people priest of the high places. Whosoever he would, he consecrated him, and he became one of the priests of the high places. Wickedness. He was so set in his rebellion from God that even a traumatic experience in life, right up close and personal, did not make any difference to him. People are the same way. You and I are the same way. God will come down, he'll send you a hurricane right to your house, and it won't shake somebody up who's determined to be wicked. Environment does not make or break a man. Desire does. Desire. The Bible says in Proverbs, a man, through desire, a man having separated himself, intermingleth with all wisdom. Now that sounds wordy until you start thinking. What he's saying there is through desire. What a man really desires, he will separate himself from anything that is not that desire and intermingle, find everything that has to do with that desire. That could be good or bad. If your desire is the Lord, you'll separate yourself from the world and intermingle with all the wisdom you can. However, if your desire is wickedness, you'll separate yourself from the Word and intermingle with the world and get worldly wisdom. Rehoboam served God for 3 years. Look at 2 Chronicles chapter 11, verse 17. 2 Chronicles chapter 11, verse 17. Rehoboam's down south. So they strengthened the kingdom of Judah and made Rehoboam the son of Solomon strong 3 years. For 3 years they walked in the ways of David and Solomon. So down south it's going well. Remember what we had down south. He wanted immediately to go up and confront Jeroboam. And I can't say that I blame him. He was a wicked man. If for no other reason, for perverting the religion of the nation. They had the oracles of God. God hand-delivered Israel his message. Now, if somebody entrusted with keeping the exact words of God written with his own finger starts perverting it, it should have made the king mad. And so he says, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to straighten him out. But remember, Ahijah shows up and says, hey, God says don't mess with him. Leave him. And so he started building cities and fortifying himself. And so during that time period, he's doing well. He's serving God. But things don't stay that way. Look at 2 Chronicles 11:21. Rehoboam gets many wives and children and concubines and all that goes with it. Here's the dangerous thing. It is so dangerous to not have conflict. That sounds counterintuitive to what we want. But you need conflict. You need problems in life because that's safe. You'll run to God when you have problems. When you don't have problems, you don't have God unless it's a desire you have inbred and are pursuing. It's hardest to follow God when there's no problems. And that's where he is. There's no real problems. He's not going to war. God told him not to. He's building up the cities. Everything's going good. The tribes he has are serving him faithfully. Okay. What do you do when there's nothing to do? How about some sin? And there we go. 2 Chronicles 11, verse 21. And Rehoboam loved, how y'all say that? Maacah, that's it. Maacah, the daughter of Absalom, above all his wives and his concubines. Now let's find out what these wives and concubines were. For he took 18 wives. This is in 3 years. And 60 concubines. And begat 28 sons and 60 daughters. This boy needed something to do. He needed something to fight. That's right. He picked the wrong one. All right, let's notice what he's got here. He has 18 wives and 60 concubines. So what's 60 plus 18? 78. Woo, got a mathematician here. So, mathematician, tell me, what is 13 divided by 78? 6. You got all the numbers that are wicked. 6, the number of man. 13, the number of rebellion. So, 78. Did I say it the other way around? So 6 times 13 is 78. All the wickedness right there proved by who he enlisted as his concubines and wives. Now his sons are 28 sons and 60 daughters. He ends up with 88 children. Craziness in 3 years. He needs something better to do. In the north, Jeroboam seeks something because something tragic has happened. In the north, Jeroboam's son is sick and he's going to die. So he doesn't run down to the high place that he's created. He doesn't call up the priests that he's consecrated because he knows they're no good. He says, hey, let's go find out from a real person what's going to happen here. He seeks a miracle for his sick child, but he's given bad news. In 1 Kings 14, verse 1. 1 Kings 14:1. At that time Abijah, the son of Jeroboam, fell sick. And Jeroboam said to his wife, Arise, I pray thee, and disguise thyself, that thou be not known to be the wife of Jeroboam. And get thee to Shiloh. Behold, there is Ahijah the prophet, which told me that I should be king over this people. He said, I'm going to start this thing from scratch. Let's go back to where it all began. It began with a prophet telling me one day I'm going to be king. Now I'm king. I've got a son, and I've done whatever I wanted to, and things have not turned out so hot. Let's go back to that man.
I was just thinking, now he remembers what the prophet said all that time.
Mm-hmm.
Now he remembers.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't remember everything.
And take with thee 10 loaves and cakes and a cruse of honey, and go to him. Okay, let's butter him up first. He shall tell thee what shall become of the child. Okay, so he's trying to bribe him into, as though the prophet can determine it. The prophet is a spokesperson for God. He's not a witch. He's not conjuring up some potion that'll heal a person or not. Is it hot in here? Knock that down to 73. Or 74, or whatever y'all want. And Jeroboam's wife did so, and arose and went to Shiloh, and came to the house of Ahijah. But Ahijah could not see, for his eyes were set by reason of his age. So now by this time he's old, and he can't see well. Well, he didn't care, the king. He said, we're going to disguise you anyway, so he won't know. The whole thing doesn't make any sense. If he's not going to recognize the woman, how would he recognize whether or not the child was going to live or not? I mean, we're talking about somebody who's able to tell truth in the future. If he can't tell truth standing in front of him, how's he going to trust the future he's going to tell him about that can't be seen? But he does. So, verse 5. The Lord said unto Ahijah, Behold, the wife of Jeroboam cometh to ask a thing of thee for her son. For he is sick. Thus and thus shalt thou say unto her, for it shall be, when she cometh in, that she shall feign herself to be another woman. And it was so, when Ahijah heard the sound of her feet, as she came in at the door, that he said, Come in, thou wife of Jeroboam. Why feignest thyself to be another? For I am sent to thee with heavy tidings. Wow. What a welcome to Walmart. Come on in, lady. I got some bad news for you. Oh, and take your disguise off at the door. Wow. And he tells her, your child's going to die. Matter of fact, by the time you get back to the city, he'll be dead. You know what I would have done? I wouldn't have gone back to the city. But I think that the just natural motherly instinct kicked in, and she had to get back to that city as fast as she could. And it says the second she got back to the city, the child died. That's the conclusion of wickedness. The wages of sin is death. It always is. So that's more good news from Jeroboam's kingdom. Let's go back to Rehoboam in the south. Rehoboam, let's see how he's doing. We've seen him multiply wives and concubines and children, decide he doesn't want to know what he wants to do. He's just going to do whatever I think this happens. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. As a king, you have a lot of power, especially back then. Now, not so anymore, but back then they did have power as far as man was concerned. But the kings of Israel were not supposed to have power. They were supposed to be a conduit of power from God. But what happens over and over is they start viewing this power position as though it's them, and they had some right to it, and they've earned it and achieved it. They didn't. God put them in a position, and he'll take them out just as quick as he put them in. So what's he do? He forsakes the law of God. And the people of Judah end up building high places. Wicked. 1 Kings 14. 1 Kings 14, verse 22. And Judah did evil in the sight of the Lord, and they provoked him to jealousy with their sins which they had committed, above all that their fathers had done. For they also built them high places, and images, and groves on every high hill, and under every green tree. Okay, so they've fallen right in line with the same thing that was going on up north. Verse 24. And there were also Sodomites in the land. Interesting, the places you find Sodomites. When something good's going on, the king gets rid of them. When something bad's going on, they're allowed to multiply. They're not kicked out. God thinks a lot of it, and not in a good way. I don't see any other cities that he destroyed. You know, they try to say that sodomy is the same, all sin is the same, and no, it's not. You don't find God destroying a city for adultery. You do for sodomy. It's plain. Some sins he reacts to immediately and viciously. In 2 Chronicles 12, verse 1. Second Chronicles 12, verse 1. We're covering about 4 books at once, so this will move fast. The exciting thing about doing this is some boring, heavy-duty study that you probably won't do on your own, and I probably won't do much of on my own. Now I have to. And you don't have to. You can get it the easy way. That's good. Because guess what? Even if I don't do this, you're still responsible to know it. And so am I, because God put it in that book, and he gave us the book. We get to heaven, he'll ask us why we didn't do it. We got the shortcut right here. I've got to do it because I've told you I'm going to teach it to you. You get the benefit of it because you can sit there and write it down and correct me when I get it wrong. 2 Chronicles 12, verse 1. And it came to pass when Rehoboam had established the kingdom and had strengthened himself, he forsook the law of the Lord, and all Israel with him. That's usually what happens. The people follow the leader. They just do. We've got a nation now that is very wicked because we've had 8 years of a very wicked leader. People follow their leader. Now, a good leader in office won't necessarily curb the wickedness. Well, it'll curb it. It won't necessarily cure it. It will curb it. The age of this that we're in right now is winding down fast. The Antichrist is getting more and more power as time goes, and he's about ready to show up. So, wickedness is just going to abound more and more. We know that. However, the leader has a lot to do with it. A lot. You know, Jesus Christ was waiting for Israel to accept him as Messiah. But lots of people accepted him. How come he didn't say that's good enough? Because the leaders didn't. The Sanhedrin, the head of all the religious groups, the Sanhedrin, did not say we recognize him as Messiah. So because the leadership didn't, even though a lot of the people did, he said, okay, that means Israel as a whole has rejected me because the leadership has. Leadership's important. Now there's no excuse for America because we get to have a hand in picking our leaders. A lot of nations don't. We do. That's one benefit God's given us. Now it's very crooked, and I don't know how much of it we really get to have any vote on, but we get to pretend vote, at least. I don't know how much of it actually goes through. But that's the leadership. That's what happens. Look down at verse 14, 2 Chronicles 12:14. And he did evil because he prepared not his heart to seek the Lord. Now this was a king. King's got one job. Seek the Lord, because you're the director of the people. God's the director of you. He should be leading the people like Moses led the children of Israel through the wilderness. But we've got no excuse. We should be doing the same. He said if you don't prepare your heart to seek the Lord, it's what? Evil. How many people go to church? How many people sit down and read the Bible but have not prepared their heart? Reading the Bible doesn't prepare your heart. Going to church doesn't prepare your heart. That's a decision you make. You make that attitude decision before you ever crack the page open or before you sit down in a pew. That's determined by your own desires. He prepared not his heart. So let's see what happens to him. In the 5th year of Rehoboam, Shishak, the king of Egypt, invades Judah. And then we get another prophet showing up. 1 Kings 14, verse 25. First Kings 14:25. First Kings 14:25. And it came to pass in the 5th year of King Rehoboam that Shishak, king of Egypt, came up against Jerusalem. Am I saying his name right? Shishak? That fellow right there. Verse 26. And he took away the treasures of the house of the Lord, and the treasures of the king's house. He even took away all, and he took away all the shields of gold which Solomon had made. He's just like a robber coming in, taking anything he thinks is valuable. God should have been preeminent in that nation, and then God would have viewed it as them invading him, his house. But because they had refused God, God had refused them, and then it's just man on man. It's just two competing evil forces. Verse 27. And King Rehoboam made in their stead brass shields. Okay, we don't have any more gold. Let's put us some brass ones. Okay, I tell you what, America does the same thing. You know, our you can see it clearly with a quarter. I don't even know that I get a quarter. I usually don't. Yes, I got a quarter. How about that? A quarter is supposed to be silver. It's not. Look at the edge and you can see how much copper's in there. It's mostly copper.
The ones before 1967.
And it's just coated to fool you. That's the same thing he did. He said, we don't have any more gold shields. How about we get some brass? It looks like gold. It might fool somebody. Nobody will know we've been robbed. You know what? Most religions are the same way. We don't have any power from God. Let's put on some entertainment. The people won't know the difference. They'll think that everybody's getting excited, but they're just getting excited about entertainment. It's not about God. Big difference. Don't go for brass. You can have gold. Verse 28. And it was so, when the king went into the house of the Lord, that the guards bare them and brought them back into the guard chamber. Okay, so did I miss something? I did.
27.
Yeah, I missed half the verse in 27. Let's go back there. They made the brass and shields, and committed them unto the hands of the chief of the guard, which kept the door of the king's house. And it was so, when the king went into the house of the Lord, that the guards bare them and brought them back into the guard's chamber. They said, look, these people are used to seeing gold. We don't have any gold. We just got stole. Let's make some brass. Nobody know the difference. When I go back and forth, these people don't have to carry it. They don't get to see it up close and personal. We just put some brass out there. Nobody know the difference. So the kingdom's on the down slope.
And actually guard it like it's
Yeah, right. Sure. Just like we do. Fort Knox, a big room full of nothing. Rehoboam dies finally. However, he dies after 17 years of reigning. He didn't really reign that long. It's just we've seen a bunch of wickedness all at once. And we've seen a lot of stories. The northern kingdom's actually going to rule a lot longer than Judah. As far as the kings, we're going to replace 3 kings before we replace one in the north. Rehoboam dies in the 5th year. Rehoboam dies after 17 years of reigning in Judah in 1 Kings 14, verse 21. 1 Kings 14:21. And Rehoboam the son of Solomon reigned in Judah. Rehoboam was 41 years old when he began to reign. So he was an old man as far as we're concerned. And he reigned 17 years in Jerusalem, the city which the Lord had chosen out of all the tribes of Israel to put his name. Now, that's where God intended a king to rule from. He didn't intend them to rule from anywhere else. You'll find all the way throughout your Old Testament, he'll say, wherever the place is, God chooses to place his name. All before Jerusalem, you find them always predicting one day God's going to choose to place his name somewhere special. And when he does, 3 times in a year, all the males are going to appear before him. And you see it over and over and over. Here it is. He's telling you, Jerusalem is the place. I've placed my name there. So the northern kingdom really didn't have a throne to sit on. And his mother's name was Naaman, a Amorite. So his closing remarks we'll find in chapter 15, verse 6. 1 Kings 15, verse 6. And I didn't write it down. 1 Kings 15, 6. I don't know why I didn't put that on my slide. He says, 1 Kings 15, verse 6, and there was war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam all the days of his life. Now the rest of the acts of Abijam and all that he did are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah. And there was war between Abijah and Jeroboam. War, war, war. We're going to find, we saw earlier last week, that there's war for 80 years. It's a civil war going back and forth. We thought we had a bad civil war. We hadn't seen nothing. Imagine a war with your brothers lasting for 80 years. Whew, that's tough.
Well, 1 Kings 14:31 says that Rehoboam slept with his father, so that's where he actually dies, right?
1 Kings 14, 29 to 31. And you find it again in 2 Chronicles 12, 14 to 16. The next thing we see is we've seen so far in the north, who is it? Jeroboam. In the south, it's Rehoboam. We just saw him die. But Jeroboam is still reigning. In the south, the next one up is Abijah. Abijah. So I think we'll stop there because I don't want to give you too much to confuse these kings. They're easy to get mixed up. So Abijah is his son, and he'll reign next. We'll find out about him next week.